So glad that you all are with us today. My name is Christy Gabbard, and I'm the owner of Local Concepts, a consulting firm which provides the development and coordination support for the Chesapeake Foodshed Network. I'm joining you today from Southwest Virginia, specifically Blacksburg, Virginia. It's a bit sunny out and some kind of cool spring weather here. And I'm also joined by my other Local Concepts team member, Yona Sifos, who is leading our program development, and she's participating from Maryland. So again, just want to welcome you and thank you all for being here today. Before we jump into the actual webinar, I did want to give you a very brief overview of the Chesapeake Foodshed Network. The Chesapeake Foodshed Network is a group of organizations, businesses, funders, agencies, and other change agents working across the Chesapeake watershed to build a stronger and more resilient food system. We are a pretty new initiative. We have been going for about a year and a half, and the leadership group that spurred the network's development, they did so because they recognized that there was so much extraordinary work happening on the ground. You know, you're going to hear from a really great example of an organization doing extraordinary work today with this webinar, but the leadership group recognized that there was so much really wonderful work happening on the ground to advance our regional food system, but there didn't seem to really be an entity that was intentionally trying to build connections, trust, and relationships among those out there doing that work. Our mission is to catalyze connections and collaboration that help build a sustainable, resilient, inclusive, and equitable regional food system in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. We really believe by catalyzing connections and collaborations that we are stronger together, and we can help to accelerate the pace of change in our food system. This slide here is an example of our network building blocks, and you'll notice that the foundation of our network, again, is all about building connections. It's about getting to know one another. It's about really building those relationships and trust and sharing knowledge and information. And the thought is that as we know one another better, that we might, over time, see opportunities to align and to work collectively towards a common agenda. So we invite anyone that supports our vision of a sustainable, resilient, inclusive, and equitable regional food system to participate in the Chesapeake Foodshed Network. The Coffee Talks are a platform that we've developed to help catalyze connections around specific food system topics. The idea is that we partner with a resource expert, in this case, Cheryl Kollin with Community Food Rescue. We partner with a resource expert to provide a quick learning opportunity through the webinar. And then during the webinar and in our follow-up materials that we will email out, we identify ways for people to engage and dig in deeper around that food system topic. Today's Coffee Talk is an opportunity to raise awareness of an innovative program that is taking a systems approach to reduce food waste and get it to those in need. As many of you are aware, food waste and hunger are really huge, pervasive problems in our food system. It's just incredible to me to think that 40%, I mean really nearly half of our food that we produce, goes to waste. That's such an incredible amount, and when you think about that in relationship to the fact that so many people in our communities are going to bed hungry every night, it's just dumbfounding, really. And that is why providing learning and connectivity platforms such as the Coffee Talks we think are so important, because it provides an easy way for people to share and learn from one another, and it helps give other organizations wanting to tackle these problems a leg up. So again, glad you're here with us. If you want to continue this conversation, we invite you to join us on social media. These are some of the hashtags that we have developed, hashtag CFN Coffee Talk, Food Recovery, and CFN Webinar. So with that, I would like to introduce Cheryl Kollin. She is the program director of the Community Food Rescue. She's going to be talking with us today about community food rescue, a model to feed more and waste less. If you, just real quick though, if you have questions for Cheryl, we invite you to post your questions in the GoToWebinar question panel. And Yona will be collecting your questions up throughout the webinar, and we'll share them with Yona at the end of her presentation. I know there'll be a lot of really rich information that Cheryl will be sharing with you today, and we will make sure to get you a recording of the presentation as well as a copy of the slide deck and the follow-up email that will come a few days after the webinar. And then I also want to direct you to a few handouts that you'll find in the GoToWebinar control panel. There's 3 handouts in there for you to have. So with that, again, Cheryl Kollin is the Program Director of Community Food Rescue. She's also the principal of Full Plate Ventures, a business consulting firm. She helps entrepreneurs and small businesses, nonprofit organizations launch food businesses in the Metro DC region. As the Program Director for Community Food Rescue, Cheryl has coordinated the network for food recovery in Montgomery County, Maryland. And Community Food Rescue that she's going to be talking about today is a program of Manna Food Center. It takes a systems approach to reducing wasted food and increasing good food to people experiencing hunger. Cheryl is also a founding member of the Montgomery County Food Council. So with that, we'll turn it over to Cheryl.
Thanks so much, Christy, and a really great thank you to the Chesapeake Foodshed Network for inviting us to come and be part of this coffee talk today. I'm so excited to share Community Food Rescue and to chat with everyone online about food recovery, food waste, and what's happening in your communities as well. Without further ado, I wanted to first give a shout out to the folks who are here joining us today on the Coffee Talk. Based on folks who signed up as of yesterday, there are 19 states represented. I understand that 85 people have signed up, and clearly there's a lot of interest in this topic. So that's really exciting for us to share our information with you. And I just did a really quick survey of seeing when folks signed up as of yesterday anyway, who you all are, and clearly folks who are working in food rescue around the country, but also education, training, advocacy, healthcare research, and then looking down below, food hubs, composters, students, economic development, environmental quality, funders, and marketing. So clearly food waste, hunger relief, and food recovery touches a lot of different interests. Since we have so many states represented, I thought I'd start at the national level and just share with you some of the statistics about food waste, how much food is wasted every year, 62.5 million tons in the U.S. And of course the flip side, looking at the food insecurity issue, is that 1 in 7 Americans right now are food insecure, which means that they may not know where their next meal is coming from. This is from a recent ReFed report. It's one of the links and that we're providing to you. It's a great report that I suggest everybody take a look at. So I wanted to start with a poll to find out what is the current status of your community's food recovery efforts. So Yona, can you put up that poll? I'm not seeing that on my screen. Are you all seeing it?
It's up and people are voting.
Okay.
So we'll just leave it up for, I think, 10 more seconds and give people a chance to vote, and then I'll close it and we should all see the results.
Great, thanks.
So the results are up and people should be seeing them. I can just read them out. 28% have a coordinated program, 14% want to start a program, 41% say there's food recovery but it's not a coordinated program, 7% are reporting no food recovery, and 10% don't know.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you for responding to that poll. So here we are at the local level, Montgomery County, Maryland. I wanted to share with you a little bit about us. So Montgomery County is within the Chesapeake Bay watershed, also known as the Chesapeake Bay Foodshed. We are just north of Washington, D.C., and you can see we're close to Baltimore as well. We are one of the wealthiest counties in the country. And yet, we do we are experiencing, some of our citizens are experiencing hunger. In fact, 78,000 of Montgomery County residents experience hunger every year. And likewise, 35% of public school children qualify for free and reduced meals here. So clearly, hunger is an issue in our county, and I imagine it's true in a lot of counties in the country. Now, at the same time, 246,000 tons, or 23% of all of Montgomery County solid waste is food waste, which of course wastes fresh water and creates methane emissions as well. So the inspiration for Community Food Rescue came from our county council, and they noticed that the Food Recovery Network students that were taking college cafeteria leftovers and taking them to shelters were really an inspiration to the council. And the council said, well, why can't we recover food all over Montgomery County? And the answer is actually there's been a lot of food recovery happening in Montgomery County in some instances for decades. Manna Food Center is our county's food bank and food distribution center. It's the largest food distribution center in the county. We have lots of smaller nonprofit organizations who have been doing food recovery, typically on a one-on-one basis with individual food donors. But in reality, the food recovery effort was not coordinated, which meant that it wasn't necessarily efficient. There are still a lot of food donor businesses that aren't donating food, and a lot of food recipient organizations that could use more food or aren't recovering any food at all. Can we put up that second poll, Yona? So this poll is wanting to ask the question, what is the largest barrier to starting or growing a food recovery program in your community?
Great, we'll just give people another couple seconds. And I'll close it here and we'll see the results in a moment. So nobody reports a lack of interest. A third report lack of a coordinating entity, half report lack of funding, 39% lack of infrastructure, and 25% lack of operational knowledge.
Okay, so lots of interesting barriers there. So I wanted to give you just a really brief history of Community Food Rescue and getting started. As I mentioned, 2012, that's where our county council was inspired and initiated a food recovery task force. It was an 8-month study of different stakeholders in the community who came together to look at what would it take to put together a food recovery program. And they came up with an action plan in 2013. One of the action plan recommendations was to hire a coordinator, and the county council did put some seed money to creating a coordinator contract, and Manna Food Center won that contract. Also in 2013, the task force morphed into a working group of the Montgomery County Food Council and became one of the 5 working groups and has continued in that capacity today. So in our first year, we did a lot of planning and interviewing stakeholders to understand what the stakeholder needs were here in Montgomery County. We looked far and wide throughout the country to see what other food recovery systems looked like. We took some tours. We went to New York and looked at City Harvest. We interviewed several other programs, and we also looked at what were the tools, what were some of the matching tools that are out and in use. So in 2014, we came up with our own system design and started implementation in 2015, and we're continuing today. When we asked stakeholders what were your needs for creating a collaborative, coordinated food recovery system, our stakeholders really knew what they wanted. And so as a result, we came up with these different elements that incorporates all of what community food rescue is about. First, we had to start with naming ourselves. We didn't even have a name. So we started with asking ourselves, who are we, how do we want to be called, and we came up with the name Community Food Rescue. We created some branding with our logo and created a website. We wanted to put together a whole series of great information for anybody who's doing food recovery here locally, and the place to go is the communityfoodrescue.org website. We established our social media, an e-newsletter, and different print materials, as you can see here, including the caps and car magnets that our volunteer food runners use to identify themselves as part of the Community Food Rescue. Food safety is, of course, paramount in any food industry, maybe even more so with a food recovery program, because in some cases food is near the end of its life or could be perishable. And this is food often going to people who have health issues compounded with having lack of nutritious food. So we wanted to make sure that we developed a comprehensive series of guidelines. We worked very closely with Department of Health and Human Services, and we continue to do so. We came up with food safety guidelines that are common, looking at the ServSafe guidelines that are used throughout the country, and we tailored them specifically for food rescue and specifically here in Montgomery County. We wanted to build protocols into our entire food rescue process, everything from looking at date labels on cans. These are oftentimes, grocery stores will pull packaged materials and canned goods that are almost at the date that's stamped on the label, but I'm sure many of you know that those dates are created by the manufacturers that talk about quality of food and not about food safety. So a lot of the food that gets rescued from grocery stores has dates that are past, but of course are still very good to eat. And so in creating our guidelines, we also came up with educational materials to talk about what that means in terms of eating food that has a stamp that's past date, but still very good to eat. We also wanted to translate all of those detailed guidelines into easy to use, easy to understand protocols for our network users. So these would be the food recipient organizations, the nonprofit food assistance organizations, and also our volunteer food runners. We offer a series of classes on safe food handling and transportation. We just did our first webinar on that topic last week that incorporated both the home consumer as well as those involved with rescued food. We developed a series of food safety videos thanks to our friends at EPA and Cabrini College based in Philadelphia. They came out and we created a series of videos last summer that are also up on our website. And to make sure that our volunteer food runners understand what our guidelines are, we ask them to review those guidelines, watch the videos, and then actually take and pass a short multiple choice quiz before we make their accounts active and before they can start recovering food. When we asked our stakeholders what they wanted in terms of a matching system, they were very clear. And you can see here on the left side, these were the kinds of criteria that they asked us to come up with when we were looking at and investigating different software tools for matching food donors with food recipients and food runners. So the system needed to be easy to use. We needed to have real-time matching. We needed to honor existing relationships. So for those food assistance organizations that already had established relationships with food donor businesses, wanted to make sure that those were retained. We wanted to make sure that there was reliable transportation, that there were uniform food safety protocols, and uniform metrics for collecting information about how much food is being recovered, who's recovering it, how many people is that serving, and so on. And folks wanted to make sure that the user experience was a good one, so we had to come up with a rating system, something like a Yelp-type 5-star rating system. And with all of these great matching criteria, the stakeholders said we want this to be free for everyone, food donors and food recipients alike. So on the right side, this was just some of our early mapping to come up with a sense of, what does this whole system look like? What is a system? What are the criteria? How are things going to be matched? And what does everybody have to do? So this is just one of our early drawings. As we scoured the country looking at both food recovery systems and also looking at the matching tools, the software tools that were out in 2014 and 15, we decided that we would, as we looked at all the different programs, we decided to go with ChowMatch, which is a software that's been developed by the Peninsula food runners in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we not only liked their software, but we really liked the philosophy of their operations and how they did food recovery in the San Francisco Bay Area. So briefly, food donors, food recipient organizations, and volunteers sign up on their web tool. They create a profile for themselves, and then food donors, when they have food to donate, will post a donation. And from the beauty of the software algorithms, the software actually will match that food donation with the food recipients that are in our network. And once that match is made, then a call goes out to the food runners, the volunteers, and the first volunteer to claim the food run gets that run. Everybody is notified with that food run and all of sharing the contact information. The volunteers will then go and pick up that food from the donor and drop it off at the recipient's organization. And then metrics on those food donations are aggregated, and everyone is asked to fill out a short Yelp-type rating of their experience. So we've been working with Peninsula Food Runners for the past year, and starting with their software that they initially created, we really created a second generation of software, and it's so robust. It's a really very wonderful to see it in operation now, and we needed though to now convey that matching tool to the public and to our network users. So we like to refer to Community Food Rescue as the Uber of food recovery, and a lot of people get that in an instant. We also created a 1-minute animated video that shows that process pretty simply, and that's on our website as well. Feel free to look at that. Well, we have built a lot of robust features into the software matching tool, and the one of the great features now is a mobile app. So it's called Chow Match, and we are so excited that it's now a mobile app, which means that donors, when they're whether they're a farmer out in the field or a restaurateur getting ready for a busy dinner, or a caterer that's on their way to a job, they can post a donation right from their smartphone, both Android and iPhones. The recipients will be able to check their smartphones to see if they have a food run coming. Volunteers, when they see that there's available food runs, can click and accept a food run on the fly, whether they're driving home from work or picking up their kids from school or whatever. And then at the end of the food run, all 3 participants can rate their experience right there from their smartphone. So we're really, really excited about that. This gives you an idea of some of our network partners and also the kinds of food that Community Food Rescue is matching through our network partners. So we take really all kinds of food, and we take it from restaurants and caterers and grocery stores, farmers markets, schools, institutions, hospitals, really any licensed food business in Montgomery County. I'd like to just share with you one story of a food match and a food run that happened last fall. It was the height of harvest, and you can see Amanda, who is the farmer on the top left, donating 200 pounds of her fresh organic tomatoes that she was unable to sell. And because she's a busy farmer out in Poolsville, one of our rural areas within our agricultural reserve, Amanda posted her donation on Community Food Rescue, and it was matched instantly with Shepherd's Table, which serves a healthy, delicious dinner to about 120 clients every night in Silver Spring, about 30 miles away or so. The food run request was posted, and volunteer Bill with the red cap on claimed that run. He went to Poolsville, picked up those tomatoes, drove them to Shepherd's Table, and the chefs at Shepherd's Table made those tomatoes into a delicious tomato sauce and served a delicious spaghetti dinner 2 days later. So for us, that's true success, and it was great to see all facets of that food run, and to see how good food did not get wasted but really was enjoyed by Shepherd's Table's client guests. Another element of Community Food Rescue is capacity building. As I mentioned, we work with many nonprofit organizations, some of which are quite small and don't necessarily have the capacity or very much capacity to rescue and distribute food. So whether they are a small food pantry, maybe working out of a church or a community center, or they're a larger program like Interfaith Works or Shepherd's Table, or other groups that actually cook and serve a full meal, we wanted to help them build their capacity. So part of the county funding that we received was passed through for providing mini grants to these nonprofit organizations. We were really pleased that Intentional Philanthropy, that is in the business of grant making, administered this grant program, and we were pleased to award $40,000 in grants in 2015, anywhere from $500 up to a possible $20,000. This year, thanks to some private funding by Burness and other private foundations, we were able to up those mini grants to $60,000, and grant applications have already been received, and the review committee is looking over those applications now, and grants will be awarded in June. So we're really excited about that. And we wanted to make sure that everyone who participates in community food rescue is recognized. So we built a recognition program, both within community food rescue itself by giving shout outs on our social media, and we list all of our food donor businesses and food recipients on our website. You can take a look at who's participating. But we also wanted to partner with Food Recovery Network that, as you recall in the beginning of my slides, was the students who created Food Recovery Network. They created a third-party certification program called Food Recovery Certified. And this is really a national program to give a wonderful recognition to all the food donor businesses that are actually donating food. So we partnered with them. We created this co-branded sticker that is awarded to any food donor business that applies and is donating their food through community food rescue. So they'll get a sticker that they can put on their place of business, on their menus, on their website, and to let folks know that their unsold food is redirected to feed people and not landfills. So to recap community food rescue and what we've been able to achieve in a relatively short amount of time and where we are today. So we've created our branding, education, and resources that go out now to about 700 people that we've built in our e-newsletter mailing list and through our website and social media. We have created food safety guidelines and have made sure that food safety is woven throughout our entire food recovery process, everything from volunteers being trained. We have labeling protocols for food donors. We have tracking forms that the volunteers take with them on their food runs to make sure that any prepared food that is time and temperature sensitive is written down with appropriate time and temperature controls, and then that form is left with the food recipient organization for their files to keep on file in case there's any questions or the health department makes an inspection. We partnered with Peninsula Food Runners and have licensed their software called ChowMatch that is both a web tool and a mobile app for making the matches between food donors, food recipients, and volunteer food runners, and capturing all of that great information about aggregating food. We have capacity building grants, those mini grants that are going out to help the nonprofit food assistance organizations to do things like buy refrigerators and trucks and freezers and storage capacity, some of whom have really been able to increase their capacity for just receiving a relatively small grant. And we've built a recognition program to make sure that all of the partners within the network are getting good shout outs, and in some cases with food donors, say like caterers who are now listed on our website. When folks ask us about who is donating food and which caterer might I hire, we can now point them to our website and say, here's a list of caterers you can hire who not only provide delicious food but are also donating any remaining food through Community Food Rescue to a food assistance organization. So in our first 9 months, I'm really pleased to share with you that we now have 93 donor businesses within the network, 26 food assistance organizations, 34 volunteer food runners. We've rescued more than 128,000 pounds of food and have served more than 3,000 people. We really want to make our goal of building a county-wide network of food recovery. And thanks to our partners with Johns Hopkins Center for Livable Future, they were kind enough to help us map our food runs. And we wanted to see kind of how we were doing even in these very early stages, our first 5 months. So we asked them we gave them all the information from our web tool and all of the good information that's been recorded. And so they were able to map for us. The blue represents our food donor businesses, the red represents our food assistance organizations, and the purple represents any food donors who are also food recipients, like Manna Food Center. So again, in our first 5 months, which represented September 2015, which was our launch date of the software tool, to February 2016, let me show you what those actual food runs look like. So it looks like that purple square in the middle where all of the food runs are going to or coming from. It looks like that's Manna Food Center, and it looks like that they're the center of the universe in this map. And that's really capturing all of the 50-plus large grocery stores that they have been picking food up from for decades. And we're capturing all of the food runs that are going on. But just for comparison's sake, we wanted to remove those 50 grocery stores just to see how we're starting and what the building tools look like for our initial food runs. And what's so interesting to me about this is that we're starting to see some food runs going directly from food donors to food recipient organizations. So for instance, here in Poolesville, this is a farmer then going to a food assistance organization. And again, you can see some of the direct relationships that are starting here even on the East County, where we have a lot of food assistance organizations. So this is really exciting for us. We're starting to see that network. Again, this was just in the first few months of our operations. We'll continue to build on this map and see those trends over time. Let's put up our poll 3. And this poll asks the question, for those of you without a coordinated food recovery program, how likely will one get started in your community in the next year?
Great, we'll leave it up for just a couple more seconds. Okay, and I'll close it now and share the results. So 25% say certain, we are working on it now. 30% say very likely, we have great interest. 35% perhaps, there's lots of convincing to do. And 10% say not likely, there's little interest.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you for responding to that poll. So I wanted to share with you where Community Food Rescue is going. Now that we have done our research, we've launched, we're obviously still in the early stages, but we wanted to give you a sense of the direction that we're going into. This next year, we are placing a lot of emphasis in increasing our network. Even though those numbers look impressive, we need to continue to build our network. We want to see hundreds and hundreds of participants to really make food recovery happening throughout the county. We want to also target new donor groups. So while we do have grocery stores and caterers and restaurants and some farmers in the network, we're really reaching out now to institutions like schools and hospitals, nursing homes, and other kinds of target groups that we think could be donating more of their unsold food. We're going to continue to map our food rescue operations, and this map, as it continues to grow and become more dense and more robust and more geographically diverse, we want to be able to identify and fill in gaps of where food is not being received and where in the county, based on where we know there are individuals and groups that are still needing food, we want to be able to make those matches closer geographically together with getting food to where it needs to go. We also very much support food that's not fit for human consumption to go to animals and to compost. We work closely with the Montgomery County Food Council. The other working groups, there is an environmental impact working group that's looking at this issue right now, and we're working closely with them. So we want to make sure that the 3 tiers of food recovery, people, animals, and soil, are fulfilled. And we have an ambitious goal of recovering 20% more food by 2017. So we know that, as I said, we're still very much in our startup mode. We have a long way to go. But I want to point you to our tagline that together we can feed more and waste less. For me, is both a reminder to celebrate what we've achieved and also our plan, hope, and dream for the future. So together we can feed more and waste less.
Cheryl, thank you so much. What a really informative presentation and a wonderful service and program that you've developed, and a service that you're providing for the community, and for, I mean, it just impacts the community and the environment and all of it. So I just very much appreciate your time today and all of that wonderful information. Yona's been collecting the questions from the attendees, and we would like to just take some time now to share those questions with Cheryl. And so if you have any other questions on your mind, feel free to type them into the questions panel. And with that, Yona, would you like to go ahead and share some of the questions that we've already received?
Yes, and just another thank you to Cheryl for such a wonderful and informative webinar. And some of the comments coming in are stating just that, just lots of interest in the handouts and lots of interest in further handouts, and also some questions. So we'll go through those, and then as Christy mentioned, if you have any more questions for this time period, please type them into the question box, and if not, there's a way to contact Cheryl following. So I'll start off. Leah Lizarondo asks Cheryl, how did you get the food waste tonnage number for Montgomery County? We'd like to get that for our county.
Sure. So we contacted the Division of Solid Waste, and they do an audit every 2 years of their solid waste, which means they hire an engineering firm who actually picks through the food that, or I'm sorry, the garbage that is taken to our county's transfer station. And they do a very detailed study, not just of food waste, but of all the waste, and they come up with all kinds of pie charts and statistics and trends. So this information came from, at the time, was the latest study that was done in 2013, and there should be updated numbers coming out soon, so hopefully we'll be able to update those numbers.
Wonderful, thank you. Aisha Salazar asked, is a food council imperative to begin a collaborative food rescue organization?
Well, I think, you know, one of the keys aspects of creating a program or an organization like this is obviously you need to have a lot of collaborators, and collaboration is just, I think, really essential. It needs to be coordinated, and so some stakeholder group has to take control of that. So we were very fortunate that we had a food council. The Montgomery County Food Council was already up and running, and it while the initial task force was created by county council outside of the food recovery of the food council, it made sense to have that task force who wanted to continue the efforts in food recovery join the Food Council as a working group. And so whatever the entity is, whether it's a food council or some other entity, it's really important to join forces with your other stakeholders so that not one organization feels like they have to take on that entire burden themselves.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Landon Horan asks, are there nutrition standards for the recovered food? And if not, how feasible would that initiative be?
Well, we don't exclude any particular food. We do, in our education program, talk with our food donor businesses to explain how important it is to get healthier food to people who are food insecure. And our food assistance organizations all tell us that they right now are receiving too much bread and pastry. And while some of that is fine, they're not interested in really receiving any more. And through the beauty of our matching tool, the food recipient organizations can check which boxes, which types of food they would like to receive. And so there's different categories. There's frozen foods, there's fresh produce, there's prepared food served chilled or prepared food served hot, and one of the categories is bread and pastry. So if a food recipient organization can't take any more of any one of those categories or doesn't have the capacity to serve that, then they just would not check that box, and then whatever the food donor is offering would not be matched to a food assistance organization if they could not take that particular kind of food. I think in general, though, it's more of an educational process of really working with your food donor businesses to explain who the populations are that are being served and what kind of food is really needed in the food recovery system.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. So there are some questions about recruitment. There are two questions here that I'll read out from two different people. Josh Singer asked, how do you recruit the food donation runners, and what kind of people are they, retired students, etc., and how do you sustain their involvement? That was the first question. The second question from Richard Neves is, how did you find the food donors? Did you go to them or did they come to you? So the questions are about recruiting or finding food donors and food donation runners.
Okay, let me address Josh's question about recruiting food runners. So again, it's so wonderful that this is a program of Manna Food Center, because Manna has a fabulous reputation in the community. They've been in operation for more than 3 decades. They have built a tremendous volunteer base, and so a lot of our promotion of community food rescue has gone out to their base of donors, their base of volunteers, and several have signed up, many have signed up as volunteer food runners. I should also say that we require food runners to be 18 years old or older. They need to have a good driving record, and they obviously need to have insurance. We do make them sign a waiver to say, yes, I have insurance, and it's a waiver to make sure that they're doing this of their own accord and so on. So we recruit through Manna, but we also are pleased in our county that we have a very active volunteer center, and we post those opportunities on the volunteer center. We're at a lot of public events, we're tabling, so we're getting the word out that way, certainly through our e-newsletter and through all of our partners, both food donors and food recipient organizations. Some of the food recipient organizations already have volunteers that they use, and so we encourage them to sign up to be a community food rescue volunteer, not only for their recipient organization, but if they have some extra time, to also help with other food runs as well. In terms of who the food runners are, it's right now it seems like it's all over the map. It's I would say there are some students and some young adults, but there's also retired people. There's maybe folks who have a little bit extra time. And the beauty about the way in which we've structured the program is that there's no set commitment amongst the volunteers. They can accept a food run when it's convenient for them. So they can accept it once, or they can accept a regular weekly food run, and we do have some volunteers doing that. So it's really, you know, to match their own schedule, and because there's no long-term commitment, that it makes it easy for people to sign up and to volunteer. And the question about the donors, we've been actively recruiting both donors and food recipient organizations. We're still quite young. People still haven't quite heard about us yet. We're still very much having to get the word out. In fact, we have a outreach coordinator who's focused right now on recruiting more food donors, and we've relied on our partners to go out and recruit really all participants for us. So we're trying to get the word out both geographically and with across different sectors to really build our network.
Thank you so much for that response, Cheryl. The next question is from Hannah Semler. How do you deal with the messaging of feeding the poor food waste, and that's in quotes, feeding the poor food waste, which often gets interpreted from food recovery programs?
Right. Well, first, we never use the term food waste in our program. When we're talking about the food that's being recovered, we talk about unsold food or food that was you know, left from an event, like a catered event, but we never say this is food waste and we're giving it to people who are hungry. So we watch our messaging very carefully and making sure that that food is, I mean, if it's food that you would not eat, we would not want that to go to anybody. So we want to make sure also that our food recipient organizations and their clients also understand what is safe and what is not safe to eat. So we've actually created a simple brochure. It's like a trifold brochure. It's translated into 6 different languages, and it talks about the date labeling and what that means and how confusing it is and how it's safe to eat food even if it's past date. But there are also very specific bullet points on guidelines for different kinds of food, what the shelf life is, also how to properly thaw, store, and cook food. So it's really good for everybody. It's not just for rescued food. It's important for all consumers to know about.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. And is that resource available on your website along with the action plan? Mm-hmm.
Yes. And if you go onto our website, which is communityfoodrescue.org, you'll see across the top there's a tab called Publications and Presentations. And if you scroll down there, you'll see a flyer that's called Keeping Food Safe. And it's, as I said, translated into 6 different languages. So we would encourage you to feel free to print that off as a PDF and make it available to anyone who could use it.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. There are a few more questions, but I think at this point Cheryl has graciously agreed to review any unanswered questions and send them out. We'll be able to send them out when we send out the follow-up email. And so, yeah, some of the additional questions are around any incentive programs or around any resistance that you might be experiencing. And so I'll compile those and send those to you, Cheryl. Thank you again so much for this incredible detail and insight into community food rescue. And with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Christy to wrap it up. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I appreciate you fielding those questions, attendees. Thanks for all the wonderful, the wonderful questions that you asked and the interest. I do want to just point out again that there are 3 handouts available to you in the GoToWebinar control panel that you may find of interest. One is the Reset report that Cheryl mentioned in the webinar. The other is the safety brochure. Is that the safety brochure that you were just mentioning on your website, Cheryl?
Yes.
And I'm sorry, but I haven't looked at the third one, but it's a community food.
It's our introductory, yeah, it's our introductory brochure.
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
The third handout is Community Food Rescue. It's our introductory brochure that gives you in a real quick snapshot who we are, what we're doing, what we provide, and some great incentives for donors, recipients, and volunteers to join.
Great, thank you. And Cheryl, I know there was a question that someone was asking about the action plan. Is that available to share with the attendees?
That would probably be on the Montgomery County Food Council's website.
Okay. And I know folks were interested in joining your mailing list, and so we will share that with you. We will share that with them in the follow-up email, and you're also welcome to type it if you'd like, Cheryl, in the chat box, and then people could cut and paste it right now and join right away.
I think it's best if they either send me their email or they can join by going onto our website, which is communityfoodrescue.org, and you'll see on the main page there's a place to sign up.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you so much. And Cheryl's email is right in front of you, Cheryl@fullplateventures.com.
And
so
actually,
again, thank you.
Yeah, actually, Christy,
Sure.
I would invite people to email me at cheryl@communityfoodrescue.org.
Okay, good. Yona, if you wouldn't mind, and we'll go ahead, just send that one more time, Yona, the chat you just sent, but send it to the entire audience, and maybe include Cheryl's other email address as well. That would be really helpful. And so with that, I do, again, thank you all very much, Cheryl. Really do appreciate it. As I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, part of the Coffee Talk platform is to identify ways for people to be connected and engaged after the webinar. And so here we've got 2 slides of essentially next steps for ways that you can dig in deeper around this webinar topic and to learn more about the Chesapeake Foodshed Network. Did want to just let you all know that the Chesapeake Foodshed Network does have a food waste and recovery work group. It's a relatively new group. Cheryl's actually part of that group. It's chaired by Nancy Nunn and Jill Jefferson. And you can join that conversation with the food waste recovery group by joining the Google group. So it would just get you connected to the email list around food waste and recovery. There is a work group meeting coming up on July 26th from 1 to 2 p.m. If you're on that email list, you'll get an update of that. That's a conference call. They have the work group has quarterly calls, and they are open to anyone to attend. So if you are interested in this topic and want to be better connected with others who are thinking in the space, thought leaders in the space, then please do join the Google group list or come to attend the meeting on July 26th from 1 to 2. And you can find out more about that by sending us an email or going to our website. We also have compiled, the Chesapeake Foodshed Network has compiled a food access database, and Yona is posting some of these into the chat box for you, and we will also share these links in our follow-up email. But this is a list that has been compiled by Millie Smith with Virginia Tech. She compiled a list of many, about 50 food access reports that have come from the Chesapeake Bay region. So there's 6 states in our region, and then she's coded these reports based on what the recommendations and strategies are in the report. So if you're interested in mobile market or programs such as the one that Cheryl shared today, you can actually sort by these recommendations in the reports and see which reports talk specifically about whatever topic you are interested in. Mentioned earlier that we'd love for you to join this conversation on social media after the webinar, and Natural Resource Defense Council want to point out that they have also launched the hashtag Save the Food. And then finally, if you go to our website on the ChesapeakeFoodshed.net, you can join our email list, and we will share with you upcoming events such as those here on the screen that you may be interested in. And these are ones that are specific to food waste, but we share events that are related, general events that are related to the food system in general, but some of the ones that you may be interested in attending in the near future: Makeover Montgomery in Silver Spring on May 4th through the 6th, a Food Waste Summit in DC on May 11th, and this Feeding 5,000 in Washington, DC on May 18th, Reduce and Recover Conference in Boston, and then again, we invite you to join our email list by going to ChesapeakeFoodshed.net. Again, thank you so much for attending. Just want to invite you, if you are interested in broadcasting or sharing your programs or your organization with a broader audience, we invite you to use the Coffee Talk platform to connect with others. You can give me, send me an email, and I'll be happy to talk with you about that. Here are a couple of our upcoming talks. On June 9th, we're doing a Coffee Talk with USDA to share information and promote their Ag Census and Local Food Producer Survey. July 5th, we are launching a network learning series, and this one is really built about building organizational capacity. And then August 2nd, we will be have a Coffee Talk on GAP and food safety certification and the Food Safety Modernization Act. So with that, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining us. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have any other questions, and we'll be sending a follow-up email with the recording, the slide deck, as well as answers to the questions we weren't able to get to today. Have a wonderful day.